Hi there, this is Teresa Eicher with Counseling and Wellness Services of Archibald. We are in partnership with Jill Holgrave Wellness Consulting. Today, I just wanted to take a little bit of time and have some discussion with you about healthy relationships and how to connect with our loved ones and others within those relationships. So oftentimes I will get asked by people just, how do I connect? How do I create a safe space for the people in my life who mean the most to me, to just communicate with me and create emotional intimacy with me? How do I reassure them that I am a safe space to talk to, and just confide in? And so I wanted to share a few pointers today on just how to create that safe space. So first and foremost, I think about when creating a safe space, just being relaxed. So often we communicate both verbally as well as non-verbally. And many times people miss that our body positioning, our posture, our face, our hands, our expressions, they communicate something to the other person that we are talking to. So I'll give you maybe a little bit of an example of tone. So I might have someone come into my office and I might share the best message with them, the healthiest message that they might mean. But if I'm screaming at them the whole time that I'm sharing that message, it probably doesn't really matter what I'm saying and how great it is of what I'm saying. It probably matters more that I'm yelling at them. And so they might walk out of the office that day and be like, wow, Teresa yelled at me the whole time, rather than, wow, that was a really great message. So I encourage people when creating a safe space just to think about, what is your body communicating? What is your face communicating? Are you rolling your eyes? Are you heavy sighing? Just think about what those pieces may mean to the other person and how they might interpret that. And even maybe just giving the other person permission, where if they recognize some body language out of you and they're confused by what it might mean, just giving them a safe space to be able to say, hey, I noticed that you just gave a heavy sigh there. Like, what does that mean? Maybe it's just you simply taking a deep breath and trying to process things, or maybe it's a heavy sigh that you're frustrated. But allowing just a safe space to be able to say, hey, what did you mean by that? I picked up on that and I interpreted it one way, but I just want to make sure that I had an accurate interpretation of what that was, and allow them to be curious in that. A second point that I hit on is just being present. So part of being present is being in a location where we feel comfortable, we feel safe, where we eliminate distractions. So that might be, turning a TV off. That might be putting our phone down. In our household, if we are having dialogue with one another, there is an expectation that the phones are down and that things can largely wait until we are done with that dialogue. And so it is just common respect to put our phones down as we're having discussion and dialogue with one another. That might mean that we have to wait until the kids are to bed, or we might have to ask our kids to go participate in a different activity while we have some discussion, and just allow ourselves to be in a space that's distraction-free. So as you consider, creating that safe space, just think about to yourself, like, where am I comfortable? Where might they be comfortable? Where is it that we can eliminate a lot of the distractions? Maybe it's going on a walk in your local area, and just, allowing that to be a safe space, distraction-free. But we're moving and we're not necessarily having to look at one another face to face. Maybe that feels a little bit safer to communicate. But just being intentional and just thinking about those dynamics. Another point that I like to hit on is listening. So A lot of times, what I notice as people try to communicate with one another is that they are more listening to be able to respond and to be able to share their next thought versus listening to be able to really process and digest what the other person is saying. So if you find yourself in your head thinking, how do I respond to that? Or, I know what they're going to say right here, and trying to assume or predict, we're probably not listening to listen. Part of our listening is that we want to, create a space where the other person can share their experience and we can have some empathy for their experience. We can put ourselves in their shoes. We can look at the different things that they're considering and saying, and we can just maybe consider what it might be to have the experience that they're having. We can maybe not agree with what they're saying, but we can see how that might be their experience. I think oftentimes when people think about empathizing or really listening, I think so often we assume that agreement has to come with that. And I think those things can be separate. I think we can listen and listen well and empathize with an experience and yet not have to agree with the person too. And lastly, I think doing some reflective listening. We also call reflective listening parroting. And so if you think about a parrot and you say, Polly, want a cracker? And the parrot says back, Polly, want a cracker? Reflective listening in some ways is just that simple. As someone shares with us, it is just restating what they've shared in a summary. So maybe I say, when we were talking the other day and you turned your back away from me, I felt really hurt. I felt like what I was saying just didn't mean a whole lot to you. And I felt like you were ignoring me. So if I'm gonna do some parroting or reflective listening with that, I might say back to them, oh, so the other day when I turned my back on you, you felt like what I was saying was that you weren't important and that I was really overall ignoring you and your message. And then a lot of times what the person will do then is say, yes. And in that yes, there's validation. And so often what people are really seeking is not agreement, but validation. They just want to be understood, and they just want to know that their experience in some ways is reasonable. And so oh, yes. And how we might respond back to that is can you tell me more about that? I certainly want to understand you, and maybe if you're open to me providing some clarification, I could do that too. I mean, maybe the clarification there is simply I had something that was on the stove and I was afraid that it was going to burn. And so I turned my back to just turn the stove off. Maybe it's something as simple as that, and it just needs some simple clarification. Or maybe what we come back to is what I'm learning is that it's so important that when we're talking, I am really distraction free and that I'm focused on you. And so I can understand why you would desire that. My hope is that maybe there would be some grace here and there in unique circumstances, but I will certainly prioritize that in the future. And so it allows for some validation. It allows for us to be curious about one another. It allows us to maybe offer some clarification in the experience, and hopefully build bridges and connections and bonds in these relationships that are so important to us. Well, I hope this finds you well, and I hope you have a great week, and I will talk with you soon.